So Mike Muller joins me now. He's Commissioner of South Africa's first National Planning Commission. He also represented South Africa at the UN Commission for Sustainable Development. So I'm sure you were very interested to hear what Amina Mohammed had to say about the new goals and where Millennium Goals leave off and where these pick up. So give me a sense of what you've heard at the 8th Forum for the Future of Agriculture so far today, Mike.
Look, being invited from South Africa to come and talk about European farmers is a bit bizarre, and I was curious as to why we should be here. It was useful to hear Amina Mohammed talking about the Sustainable Development Goals because, of course, what the United Nations, which nominally is the world's leaders, what they're trying to say is we have to look at the way the whole world develops. That means if rich people eat too much and get fat, perhaps that contributes to poor people being too thin. We both need to think about what we're doing. And I found that, in fact, the discussion has raised, from a European perspective, issues which have a very important global impact, and that the global is also going to impact on European farmers and European agribusinesses and food businesses. So it's been quite interesting as an outside observer, looking at the Europeans and European businesses coming to grips with what's going on in the rest of the world and how it's going to affect them.
We often talk about thinking global and acting local, but I suppose there's something of a truth in that cliche, if you will, as most cliches are true. I wonder what you hear of those European voices you've heard today and also what you have to offer in terms of the South African perspective.
I mean, one of the things I wanted to come and say is that environmental issues in particular, but also technology issues, what we accept and what we choose to use, are in the end going to be local decisions, and there must be a fairly careful balance between people who want to impose their way of doing things and others who say, actually, we quite understand why you're doing what you're doing, but perhaps it's not what we need. There's a core set of issues which need to be addressed. We can't poison people, and we need to make sure that everyone can afford to eat. But beyond that, even environmental issues are often a matter of social choice. Europeans have completely transformed their landscape. This isn't a natural landscape in Europe. This is a largely man-made landscape. Allow Africans, for instance, to make their own decisions about how they want to transform that landscape. The question then is, how does a business like a Syngenta, of interest to me, how does a business like Syngenta fit into this? Can they just run one kind of business which suits one kind of environment, or do they have to run different kinds of businesses? And I was hoping, I think probably the sessions this afternoon, we'll hear much more about what kind of technologies can be used in what places and whether that approach can be flexible or whether it's going to tend to be driven a bit by what happens in Europe.
You've just been a panellist on that session on the environment. If there was one thing you learned that was new, or one thing that surprised you, or one engaging part of the debate, is there anything that has struck a chord with you? I know there was a debate on the natural environment and the whole of the value chain with lots of different views being aired.
Well, what I did find interesting was the deep desire, which I understand, of farmers to be paid for what they do to protect the environment. Everyone says, yes, environmental protection is important, but it costs money, and that must be reflected in higher food prices. And I thought, oh my dear, if people think that the rest of the world is going to pay higher food prices to support European environmental standards, then we're in for a little bit of discussion, let me put it politely.
You talk about what you hope for this afternoon. So in terms of what you would want to hear in terms of where the debate should go next, when we look at using waste as a resource, when we talk about the circular economy, when we talk about those sustainable development goals that are coming up from the UN, what do you think you'll be hearing more of? What will be the themes that come through?
I've always been curious about the circular economy. It always seems a bit wasteful for me, from my perspective, to see all that good nitrate flowing into rivers, and it seemed much more sensible to try and keep it on the farm where it could be useful. So in many senses, what I'm more interested in is how the technologies that are increasingly available can be made available to larger communities of people, big farmers, small farmers, very specialized farmers, very general farmers, without them feeling trapped into a model that doesn't allow them to escape. It's the GMO seed discussion, it's the reliance on particular pesticides and so on that I think has actually weakened the ability of agribusiness to demonstrate how useful it could be worldwide. And I hope there's a little bit of discussion about how the debates around technology and innovation can reflect more what people are trying to get out of agriculture and out of agribusiness. I think it'll be good for business. I think it'll be very good for development.
Mike Muller, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the forum.